Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now over the years using a dual GPU setup has become increasingly hard to justify. The concept is pretty much obsolete, especially when you consider the majority of games don't support multiple graphics cards. SLI makes even less sense if you're using older hardware like my ASUS MARS II here. This rare old beast combines two GTX 580 GPUs on a single PCB, and as impressive as it looks, this triple slot, triple 8-pin powered behemoth is next to useless for playing the latest and greatest titles. Unless it's Counter-Strike 2. The game is only tickling our second GPU with less than 20% utilisation, and no amount of farting around with tweaks or game profiles will change this, but the average was slightly better in dual GPU mode. Running in single GPU mode made the percentile figures better though, so I'd be inclined to stick with that. The upside of SLI being as useful as a handbrake on a canoe in 2024 means that once expensive dual GPU cards are a fraction of their original price. Sometimes. Other times people, let's say, get a little enthusiastic about pricing up their old gear. I saw a GTX 690 for 300 quid the other day. Knock one of those zeros off, mate, and you've got yourself a deal. If like me you love playing older games with older hardware, you're a bit of an enthusiast, then you'll know there's something special about seeing SLI in all its glory. Playing Crysis at the high settings with anti-aliasing enabled was something I could only dream of back when the game came out. I'm glad to see the original title still works well with a config like this. Granted, my i5 12400F ruins the retro aesthetic somewhat, so I apologise for that, but at least it goes to show that these older cards will work with newer processors too, after turning off a couple of options in the BIOS. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a lot more recent than the original Crysis, but this was another good experience, a very good experience. This is a solid example of SLI working well in action, and no additional alterations were needed to the default profile. Although it was tempting to stick everything on high settings here, I opted for normal textures as we are quite limited on VRAM. High textures caused a lot more frame drops and stutters, which I thought was caused by SLI at first. It turns out we just needed to manage our expectations a bit with the settings in this one. Playing around with SLI today also gave me a chance to revisit some of the games I haven't played in a long time. Far Cry 5 is one of those. When this came out, I used to play it every day, and as I looked back through my games library in search of something that would run in dual GPU mode, this stood out. Now 1080p wasn't a great idea, but making a small adjustment to the resolution scaling smoothed things out a bit. Our percentile lows leave a little to be desired, but even a drop in native resolution wouldn't have completely glossed over the lack of VRAM. The above were a few of my good experiences, but here we must transition slowly into the not so good. The Witcher 3 still works with SLI even after the next gen patch, at least it seems to anyway, in DX11 mode of course, and while I didn't need to make any tweaks, the experience was quite stuttery. It was pretty bad actually. The resolution and VRAM utilisation didn't matter. Just like in CS2 at the start, disabling one of the GPUs is the best idea to smooth things out a bit. Now, as you can imagine, there are plenty of posts on various forums detailing the trials and tribulations of those determined to make SLI work, and not only that, but work well these days. I've read about titles that worked fine once upon a time, but driver and in-game updates have gradually made support worse or removed it altogether. Using a multi-GPU setup is going to hinder what could otherwise be a straightforward gaming experience. Instead, there could be tweaks to be made, files to edit, and hair to pull out. Honestly though, to me that's all part of the fun. Take Apex Legends here. This ran absolutely terribly at first, but after stumbling across an old post that somehow I can't seem to find again, I learnt how to make it run smoothly without any horrible graphical glitches or flickering. Could I have figured this out on my own? Maybe, after a few hours of trial and error, but I feel as though I'm part of some sort of exclusive club dedicated to keeping dual GPU gaming alive. It takes me back to the days when I was troubleshooting my system more than I was actually gaming on it. I don't miss that era, but I have fond memories from it. As I said, all part of the fun. I imagine SLI might be less frustrating overall if you're using more modern cards. You know, even if one isn't utilised, which will often be the case, you can fall back on that single powerful GPU and still get a good frame rate. Aside from the dual GPU issues with the Mars II, it's also important to remember that a lot of games won't start or run well anyway on a 580 these days. It's simply too old. For some reason though, I've enjoyed every minute of revisiting old school SLI. I've experienced the good and the bad, but we can't forget the funny. This is why I thought I'd end on Skyrim. It's an older game where the benefits of SLI will really stand out performance-wise, but in order to show you these gains, I have to remove the default FPS cap, and the result is just chaotic. As you can see, our dual GPU solution is getting us over 150 FPS at the Ultra preset, and both GPUs appear to be fully utilised. This isn't without its problems though. I mean, I've got floating horses for one. Good luck making a quick getaway when our horse is going vertical up into the sky. The dragon flying overhead certainly wasn't helping, though a few issues with the physics made sure that it sort of glitched above and below ground, making the flames coming from its mouth miss a lot of the time. The only animal that seemed to work normally with physics like this were the chickens and the butterflies. But apart from that, all the other livestock I came across decided to float away as well. I hope the in-game farmers didn't want any animal products here, because if so, they need a ladder because everything's halfway in the sky. Yeah, not quite sure what was going on, whether or not this can be attributed to the SLI or the uncapped physics, but all in all, it's a pretty chaotic experience, but it's definitely fun to play around with. The water was also flickering, so not quite sure what was going on here, whether or not this could be attributed to the physics or the SLI. Skyrim is not best played like this, of course, but it is worth checking out for the performance gains alone, because you may be surprised by what multi-GPU setups can do in 2024. That goes for all the games that worked well also. Now overall, the Mars II is a pretty rare card, but you're going to get similar results if you buy two GTX 580s and then pair them together in SLI. Driver support ended a while ago, and as you've seen here, performance isn't going to be great a lot of the time, but this is definitely one for the enthusiasts out there, one who likes to mess around with different settings and games in order to relive nostalgia or just to see how things perform. Now, as I said before, I've enjoyed every minute of my multi-GPU experience, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. I'm not looking forward to my electricity bill at the end of the month, let me tell you that, because this card sure is thirsty. I couldn't manage to find a way to get power metrics up on screen. MSI Afterburner didn't have the GPU power option, neither did hardware info, so I'm not sure if something changed along the way, or this was before you could monitor GPU power without actually using an external tool. So it's a shame, because I imagine this sucked down quite a lot. But as for this one, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.